Morning, Mama. What's up, kiddos? We ready to move? How's that taste? Come on, girls. Time to get some fresh stuff. Mama. Quit digging up my pasture. Let's go. There you are. Can't forget this. All right. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for all the interstate noise, if you can hear it. The interstate's extremely far away, but certain mornings when the air is right, it sounds like the interstate's coming through the backyard. This is going to be take 2 of this video. About 2 weeks ago, I started gathering footage for a couple of things I wanted to highlight and talk about, and then I lost it all. So this will probably be pretty quick just because I can't really recall everything that I touched on. Obviously, the cows are home. They are next door. They're in this 4-acre leased pasture, which is right next door to our home 5 acres. And basically, the last video was when I was kind of buying time as we worked our way back through another leased pasture up the road. And I was kind of trying to buy as much time as possible to get to October 1st, I believe it was, because that was my cutoff date for hauling pregnant cows. So that was weeks ago. Today is October 20th. So I think I made it to October 5th. The first Saturday in October is when I ended up hauling cows, and I'll see if I can overlay some footage. I had some pretty decent footage of getting the cows all loaded and hauled out of there, but due to technical difficulties, I lost it all. So it was a pretty uneventful roundup. Got them in 2 trips. Didn't really stress anyone out. Nobody really busted out or got away like they did last year. I actually ended up having to, last year, one of the calves got back into that main pasture area that you saw in the last video up at that lease, and I couldn't get her up into the trailer. So I had hauled her mom in the load before, so I had to go all the way back home, load her mom back up, and bring her mom back out to basically get her to come up to where I could get them loaded. So yeah, we're back home for the winter. What we're gonna do is, as you can see, we're already over halfway through this 4-acre lease. You know, we started down there at the tree line. You can kind of see those white posts are my my back fence that I'm moving. Basically, it's about 3 days. I'm a little behind. You can kind of see the transition from the stuff they're on to the stuff that they had been on yesterday. Your grass starts regrowing about day 3, day 4, your grass starts regrowing. It's obviously a little bit slower this time of year. I just don't want the cows to go all the way back to start grazing that regrowth, especially this time of year. You obviously never want to do that, but especially this time of year, as those grass plants are trying to put as much energy reserves into the roots as possible to not only get through winter, but then to explode come spring. So by allowing the cows to go back to, let's just say, day 4, it's really going to hurt that grass plant over winter and next spring. You can see they are digging on the cup plant and dogbane. So it's kind of like a race to get over here. When I first move them into a paddock, it's a race to see who can get over to this area of the strip. What's up, Mama? I don't have a free hand to pet you. Oh goodness. It's kind of a race to get over to, sorry, can't pet you. It's a race to get over to this chunk of the strip and start grazing this really leafy, high protein stuff. They love it, you know, during the growing season. They eat dog bane all spring. They eat cut plant all summer, but they're definitely digging it during the fall. I'm sure it has a completely different nutrient profile this time of year compared to the grasses. This has been an extremely mild fall. Again, we are in October 20th, and we got a big chunk there, mama. This is October 20th, and we have only had a handful of frost nights. We have had 0 freezing days. I think right now we're scheduled for our first one. Next week. But normally by this time we would have had at least even a couple nights of freezing, which, you know, 3 to 4 hard freezes. So I would say, from what I read, you know, 30 degrees or less really is what pauses the growth of your grass. So that essentially gets you into, I wouldn't say safe grazing, because your grass plants can come back out of dormancy. You know, you start having like 4 or 5 days of really warm temperatures and not freezing overnight. Those grass plants will kind of start growing again. They'll come out of dormancy. But 3 to 4 hard frosts really send those grass plants into dormancy, and then that's where you can kind of start grazing and not worry so much about your grazing regrowth. And definitely by October 20th in the years past, we have been at that point. So it hasn't been that risky to worry about grazing regrowth. And that's not the case so far this fall. We've been extremely mild, extremely dry, but temperatures have been high 70s, high 60s, and they're only staying, you know, 45 to 50 degrees overnight. So nothing's gone into dormancy yet. So that's why I have that back fence set up. I hope that by the time they're done with this pasture, which is going to be November 1st, if everything calculates out to the way I have it figured, November 1st is when they're going to be done with this 4 acres. Then I have a decision to make. I really only have I have 4 choices. I have my 2.5 acre home pastures over there. I've got the 2 acre planted annual field, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then I suppose there's just that little meadow that's back there in the trees straight in front of me. Regrowth on everything, just like I was stating in my last video. Normally I could work them back through that lease on our way out to bring them back home, and there just was not the tonnage. And you know, out here on this pasture has been rested since, let's see, I pulled them off of here. It was June, would have been the last time that this stuff was grazed. And as you can see, it is thick, but the height and the overall mass, I mean, there are still some bare spaces ahead of us. I'm just not getting very many grazing days out of this rested stuff. And our home pastures are really even worse. The tonnage, the grass growth on our home 2.5 acres is far less than this, because that stuff was grazed in July. What's up, big buddy? What's up, big buddy? So, you know, I think I'll be all right. I overbought hay. I've got more than enough hay. Normally I try and get to January 1st. January 1st is my goal. If I can start feeding hay after January, I'm happy with that. I don't think I'm gonna get there this year. There's a couple of factors that are going to really determine if that happens or not. But I overbought hay, so I think I'll be all right. But obviously the whole point of overbuying hay, other than the safety net, is to save you money into the next year. And I did that a little bit last year. I was able to retain about 1,200 pounds worth of hay that I didn't feed out last winter, that just, you know, recycled into this year. Helped save me a little bit of money this year. One of the decisions I have to make is when to graze this planted annual field. So if you don't recall, the cows didn't have hardly any time on this field. I mowed this all down to about 6-7 inches just to see what would happen as far as regrowth was concerned. And, you know, I got some really good regrowth on this. However, because the majority of the stuff that came up and the majority of the stuff that I planted was sorghum Sudan, when it gets exposed to frost, it produces prussic acid, which ultimately leads to cyanide poisoning in your cattle. So they will, they'll essentially suffocate. The issue that I'm having is when sorghum Sudan has been frosted, like I said, we've had a handful of frost events, just a couple, but enough to really kind of start this stuff dying off. It's safe after 5 to 7 days. With each little frost event we've had, it hasn't been general frost, but it's been patchy frost. So I'd look out from my deck and I would see a new section of brown or a new area of this field that was starting to turn brown. One of the big issues that I'm having, you get over to certain plants that have had protection from the trees, and you can see, I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but this stuff is still super green. These overhanging trees, because we haven't had a hard freeze, have been protecting these plants from getting frost on them, so they have not died. So the issue would be, I turn the cows into this, and the majority, let's say 90% of this stuff is dead and free of prussic acid, but then we're out here during a freeze or a frost event. Some of these random plants that haven't been hit yet get frosted over. They produce that prussic acid. An animal just so happens to eat that plant, and then now they're dead from cyanide poisoning. I obviously want to get the cattle on here as quick as possible, because after this stuff has died, the longer I wait to graze it, the less nutritious it is going to be. But safety first, for sure. I mean, safety third for me, safety first for my cattle. That's what I always say. There is a bunch of other really good stuff in here that will last through more frost. There's a lot of brassicas, turnips, kale, rapeseed, stuff like that. That is going to stay nice and green and nice and nutritious, but there's just not a ton of that stuff. Again, like my grazing corn, my BMR 84 corn, a lot of this brassica type seed just didn't take, it didn't pop. The majority of everything in here, the only thing that grew out of the mix, it seems like, is this sorghum Sudan. Am I gonna put sorghum Sudan in next year's mix? Truthfully, I don't know. Obviously, the whole idea was to use this just for the summertime as a great way to finish the cattle that are going to the processor, and then, possibly just give that really high nutrition to the entire herd when the cool season grasses slow down. But knowing what I know now on how well this stuff actually regrows, it kind of seems like it would be a waste to plant this again next year, just planning to graze it during the summertime when it's safe, when, I can get some late fall grazing out of this stuff because of regrowth. So I might choose to not do sorghum Sudans next year, just double down on my corn, actually get a corn planter to actually get that corn to grow. The grazing corn, the BMRs, the brown midribs, any corn really, doesn't produce those toxins when they frost and freeze. So I'm assuming corn, being a grass plant, even if it's grazed or clipped, will grow back again. So I hope that I could get summer grazing and then a late fall grazing out of a bunch of corn and all those other cover crop seeds that I chose for the mix. I just don't think I'm going to do sorghum Sudan again, because I don't want to have to deal with the stress of trying not to kill the whole herd. So that's it. Like I said, super quick video. I really can't remember all the things that I had been talking about over the last couple weeks. Any questions, comments, concerns, sarcastic remarks, you guys know the drill. Leave them down below. And if you haven't found us on Instagram yet, at WR_ranch, go ahead and look us up. Talk to you later, guys. Thanks for tuning in.